Welcome to the first episode of Terry Talks TV, where I unpack television shows from the past, the present, and the future. People could be forgiven for thinking anime started with the pretty guardian who fights for love and for justice, Urusei Yatsura, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Even though those series are fun, they're far from the first. Here in Australia back in the 1960s, cartoons were quite multicultural. After the first wave of American imports like Crusader Rabbit and Rough and Ready, we began to see Japanese cartoons for the first time, and the king of those cartoons was a guy called Tezuka Osamu. Tezuka started writing and illustrating manga as a teenager in the 1940s. His first big hit became his most influential work for some really complicated reasons. It was called Jungle Emperor Leo, but I knew it as Kimba the White Lion, so let's start there.
Kimba, 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 Kimba.
A whole generation of Australian children watched and loved Kimba. The plot is quite familiar. When his father Caesar is killed by hunters, Kimba's pregnant mother Cleo is captured and put on a ship heading for a zoo overseas. Kimba is born on board the ship. When it sinks, he's taught to swim by a fish and makes it ashore on the coast of Africa. Kimba has to travel across Africa to his homelands. On his way, he meets people and decides to take what he learns about the positive side of human culture and bring it to the animals in his ancestral lands. Tezuka was always a bit of a humanist. The plot is basically Hamlet done as an anime about animals in Africa. Kimba is a series with a lot of positive messages about cooperation and friendship. Many years later, a wealthy American corporation copied Kimba, in some cases scene for scene, and made billions of dollars doing that. But don't settle for the stolen version of Tezuka's intellectual property. Kimba is the OG of The Lion King.
The Amazing Three. Spaceman with a mission. You must make a very big decision. With your solar bomb you could destroy us. Or save the world. Or save the world.
Strap yourselves in because this one is high concept. In the future year of 1970, during a Third World War, 3 aliens are sent to Earth for a year to evaluate us. The Galactic Federation will either help Earth or destroy it depending on the results of that investigation. The 3 aliens, Bonnie, Ronnie and Zero, disguise themselves as a rabbit, a horse and a duck. After they become ill from accidentally eating some poisoned mushrooms and start a forest fire, they are rescued and assisted by a boy called Kenny. It just so happens that Kenny's brother Randy is a secret agent. The Amazing Three, also known as the Wonder Three and Wonder Suri, is a series that looks at some pretty serious concepts. It looks at ecological issues, the perils of development, the problem with sports, hunting, militarism and violence, and all in the context of a cartoon with cute, fluffy animals. The Japanese version of The Amazing Three ran 52 episodes with a sweet, logical ending where the 3 returned to the Galactic Council, with Kenny on board, to argue their case to save the Earth. There are some big ideas here that are packaged in an innocent delivery system, and it was quite fun to watch in the day, because it got me thinking about some things that I might not otherwise have even considered. At the time I was living out in semi-rural areas, so the demarcation between cultivated land and the bush was quite clear to me at that time. This is Princess Sapphire of Silverland, who, because of an error, was born with the blue soul of a boy and the pink soul of a girl. She pretends to be male to prevent the evil Duke Juralaman from inheriting the throne of Silverland because women can't rule the kingdom. Juralaman is a wannabe fascist dictator. An angel called Tink is sent from heaven to take back Sapphire's blue soul, but ends up going on adventures with her as Juralaman and his henchman Baron Nylon try to prove Sapphire is a female so they can take over Silverland. The manga this anime was based on was groundbreaking in the industry for being the first property to give us a gender-ambiguous lead character. In some ways, from a modern viewpoint, it's done in a problematic way. For instance, Sapphire loses her sword-fighting ability when her blue heart is taken from her in one episode. But Princess Knight was the start of a change in the way manga and anime dealt with gender. It's got a lot going on. Tezuka was influenced by other works when he created Princess Knight. Things like A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Tales of Hoffman. This anime has a very different feel and look about it. It's got a... Now we come to the biggest and best of them all. I'm an Astro Boy tragic. Here is just some of my Astro Boy collection. Astro Boy started in 1952 when Tezuka created an anime called Ambassador Atom, which was mildly successful. Deep diving into the meh reaction to it, Tezuka found out that one of the characters, a boy robot called Atom, was popular with young boys. He then created Tetsuwan Atom, the Astro Boy manga that we know today. My history with Astro Boy goes deep. Even before I saw him on television, my late uncles Roy and John gave me this as a Christmas present. This toy gives me a warm, nostalgic glow, which turns into sadness when I realise that if I still had it now, it'd be worth $3,500. Kids, never let your parents throw out your toys. There could eventually be an overseas vacation or a great home cinema set up in your toy box. The 1962 version of Astro Boy, the first one that came out as an anime, is my jam. It's black and white and has pretty basic animation, and the catchy theme song was one that every kid in the 1960s memorised. The theme tune to Astro Boy is now the station jingle, also known as an Eki Mellow, for Takadanobaba Station on the Yamanote line in Tokyo, and that was hard to say. I didn't know about it until I heard it live at the station in April. Astro Boy is set in the far distant year of 2000 AD, and it's set in Takadanobaba. For a children's TV series, it has a strangely grim origin story. Professor Boynton, who works as a roboticist at the Ministry of Science, has a son called Astor. Astor is killed in a brutal self-driving car accident. Boynton goes insane and locks himself in his lab and creates a robot boy to replace Astor. As you do. He activates Astro, but then gets frustrated that Astro doesn't grow up like a real boy, and so he sells him to Cacciatore, a circus owner, as a circus act. Boynton quits the Ministry of Science and disappears until he eventually comes back to help Astro with some upgrades, but he's basically an asshole dad. I really identified with that. In Astro's world, robots are slaves. They're maltreated and subservient and looked down upon. They're the new underclass. Astro's new mentor, Dr. Elephant, makes him a family, a mother, a father, and a sister, Uran. In the reverse of the usual way, the son came first, then the parents. Astro lives in a family he creates himself, and he does all this while fighting monsters, evil gangs, and runaway robots. Later versions of the character came out, including the computer-generated movie recently, but none of them has my heart the way the 1960s version does. There's something about the simplicity, the naivete, and the complexity of it that still enchant me. So that's about it for this one, the first of the Terry Talks TV episodes. Maybe I'll visit more 1960s Japanese anime in future videos, and I may even include a little bit of live action as well. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and keep your powder dry and your whistle wet, and I'll be back next week with another video. See you then.